In the summer of 2017, I decided to attend an annual summer program to give back to the community and flesh out my summer. Here's a picture of one of the patients I worked with at the program. She was 13 years old when this picture was taken, just a few years younger than me. When you see this picture, you might be thinking, why does she look a little bit different from other 13-year-old teenagers? The reason why you have this question is because she's an MPS patient. Mucopolysaccharidosis, or MPS, is a rare disease. The definition of rare disease varies in different countries. For example, the US defines it as the disease with one confirmed case per 1,500 people. The ratio in Japan is 1 to 2,500. China has not yet given an official definition of rare disease. MPS, the rare disease, is caused by the lack of attack of the enzyme in the human body. Common symptoms are claw fingers, bone and spine deformity, and patients usually have bigger bellies than they normally would. This disease is very dangerous because it could lead to developmental delay, visceral organ dysfunction, systematic skeletal deformity, and early death if untreated. According to the graph, you can see the highest prevalence of MPS is in Australia, Europe, and Africa. I started volunteering at Beijing Zhengyu MPS Caring Center since 2017. This caring center specifically serves with children of MPS. They invite a doctor from the US to come to China every year to offer free diagnosis and lectures. My job was to translate between the doctor and the patients when they have one-on-one diagnosis, as well as translating simultaneously when the doctor held lectures. After seeing 40 patients each year and becoming more and more familiar with the disease, I felt like I'm almost an MPS doctor without having set foot in a medical school. Each year's summer camp usually lasted for 4 days, and on the last day, we usually went out and visited the beautiful scenic spots of different cities. I tried to play with the patients and talk to them. Some of them were really optimistic, and they were not afraid of talking to people at all. But some of them were a little bit shy, probably because their brains were not well developed. Still, I encouraged them to see the beautiful scenes outside and to enjoy life. Although the routine of each year's summer camp I attended stayed the same, my understanding of the disease has changed over time. When I met the patients for the first time in 2017, I felt deeply sorry for their misfortunes. I couldn't imagine how these kids spent their entire childhood on an armchair, unable to run around like other kids do. Their cerebral developmental delay leads to an incapability of learning, and thus most of them are forced to withdraw from the regular educational system. After attending the second summer camp, I realized that the quality of their lives wouldn't improve unless they received effective medical treatments. Through conversations with the patient's parents, however, I noticed a critical issue, which is the inadequate treatments in China and the exorbitant prices of the few existing ones. Take hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, or HSCT, as an example. This is a permanent treatment that allows continuous secretions of enzymes in the human body. It is available in many hospitals in China, and many patients are able to afford it. However, this seemingly perfect therapy still has deficiencies. Matched donors are hard to find in the first place, and MPS patients have a chance of rejecting the donor's stem cells, resulting in the risk of mortality. Another therapy is called enzyme replacement therapy, or ERT. The risk of receiving this treatment is much lower, and there's no limitation on age or compromise of health. However, the cost of receiving this disease is around $2 million RMB every year, and it requires weekly or bi-weekly administration. Also, unfortunately, this therapy is currently not available in mainland China, meaning that if patients do want to receive this therapy, they have to travel all the way to another country. As you can see, The most troublesome issue for rare disease patients and MPS in particular is the lack of tangible medical treatments. The treatments and drugs for the treatments and drugs for MPS, for rare diseases are also referred to as orphan drugs. Due to the high cost and high risk of investing in an orphan drug, most pharmaceutical companies aren't able to invest in it, reducing the amount of feasible treatments in the world. A development program actually requires millions of dollars to actuate. Yet, since there's no 100% chance of success, it can take the company years to recover and recoup its losses if it didn't succeed. Another obstacle is the market. The low population of rare disease patients shrinks the size of the market, and hence, it's difficult for companies to find financial incentives to develop orphan drugs. The few existing companies then just augment the unit price of their own products, resulting in a price that's unaffordable for most patients. Therefore, according to current studies, only 5% of the rare diseases in the world have their own therapies. In addition to financial difficulties, MPS patients also have limited access to the most up-to-date information from global organizations and international companies. I personally think that a possible way to solve this problem is to establish a platform online for global communication on which patients can follow the information of the companies, and they could also meet patients in the same area. Moreover, hospitals in non-major cities in China need more education about rare diseases. When the doctor asks the patients about their medical histories, patients from non-major cities in China pointed out that their local hospitals weren't able to identify MPS, nor were they able to offer any treatments, That's because they're just unfamiliar with the disease at all, and they're in lack of advanced medical technologies. Therefore, they could do nothing other than suggest patients visit major hospitals in major cities in China, such as Beijing and Shanghai. A few hospitals in those cities have doctors who are familiar with the disease, but still, not all the patients have access to those hospitals. Despite the obstacles facing MPS patients and caregivers, I still met incredible, inspiring people at every level of this organization who are all fighting to ensure that every life is cherished and that those with the disease receive respect and support they deserve. MPS patients never relinquish their fight against the disease. Many of them keep learning new skills and leave optimistically. Here's a picture of one of the patients I worked with, as I mentioned before. She was 13 years old when this picture was taken. She was not able to walk, but she could talk very well and even go to school. When I had conversations with her, she didn't know whether or not she will be cured anymore. I almost cried when I heard that. I didn't know what to say. After a while, I told her, "You should believe that you will be cured one day. Come on, give me a smile. You look so pretty when you're smiling." She was thrilled when she heard that, and she gave me a big smile. That was the most beautiful smile I've ever seen in my life. This is a picture of a healed patient. Her name was Fung. She was 38 years old when this picture was taken, so she's around 41 years old now. She's from Hong Kong, but she grew up in the United States, where she received both ERT and HICT when she was young. Fung came to the summer camp every year as a volunteer as well. Aside from organizing events and communicating with the patient's parents, she sometimes worked with me to translate while the doctor and the patients met one-on-one for diagnosis. She's more professional than I am in the field of MPS, so I learned a lot from her. Although she once suffered from the disease, she's now very confident, optimistic, and laughs a lot. Many parents of MPS patients help not only their child, but also a wider range of patients. Ms. Zheng Lin, the founder of the Caring Center, is the mom of a 20-year-old with MPS. Her family's life was smooth until her daughter was confirmed as an MPS patient at the age of 10. At that time, she felt like the whole world toppled. She and her husband began to seek help from hospitals and doctors who were able to cure their daughter. During the process, however, she noticed the issue of the lack of availability and affordability of treatments, as well as the lack of communications between patients. Her feeling of loneliness was in part because she couldn't find people to share information with. Taking these into consideration, she resolved to found Beijing Zhengyu MPS Caring Center, a non-governmental public welfare organization focusing on the assistance, information, and care to MPS patients. The organization initiated an annual summer program in 2015, which summons the patients from all over the country to gather in one city and to receive diagnosis from the professionals. Ms. Jillian has attended many national conferences about MPS and rare diseases, and her work has benefited countless MPS patients. The doctor I met also strives to offer the best medical treatments to MPS patients. Dr. Shunji Tomatsu, an American professor working at Nemours/Alfred No. 1 DuPont Hospital in Delaware, United States, is the doctor whom the Caring Center invites to come to China every summer. When he came to China last summer, his flight was delayed, so he didn't arrive in his hotel until 11 p.m. the night before the summer camp began. He didn't go to bed immediately. Instead, he collected all the information of all 40 patients and started analyzing their medical history and current physical conditions. He only slept for 3 hours that night, but when his lecture took place the next day, he showed up to the lecture hall right on time with full energy and passion. While I was translating next to him, as you can see, I couldn't even tell that he was sleep-deprived as well as jet-lagged. After lunch, Dr. Tomatsu spent the rest of his day diagnosing 20 patients, and the diagnosis lasted until 10 p.m. At 7 a.m. the next day, his door opened again for the other 20 patients. For every patient, Dr. Tomatsu first asked about their medical history and examined their X-ray films and nuclear magnetic resonance films. Subsequently, he asked the patients to run around for a bit to get a sense of the development of their legs. In the end, he offered the patient the optimal plan for future treatment. Dr. Tomatsu was just never exhausted. He not only gave his patient his business card at the end of each diagnosis, but also he took a picture with all of them. After cooperating with him for 3 years, I deeply respect his dedication to this disease. I learned so many things from working at this caring center, and now I'd like to share 3 main lessons I learned with you. First, cherish life and be content with our lot. Sometimes, especially when I worked with MPS patients directly, I felt like I'm such a lucky person to be healthy. To some extent, our health is the most precious thing in our life. Even if you don't have a perfectly functioning body, however, you can still cherish life, forge relationships, and explore the meaning of everything you do. Second, show MPS patients respect, support, and love in whatever circumstances. Imagine, if you walked down the street and suddenly saw an MPS patient, how would you react? You might be a little bit surprised, or you might just view them differently from normal people. Instead of doing that, please show them support and kindness. And last, I learned to help MPS patients as much as I can by making good use of my strength. When I was in middle school in the US, I gave an assembly speech in front of my whole middle school to raise awareness of MPS and rare diseases. Since I'm also an aficionado of economics, I am recently working on an academic paper about orphan drugs and how pharmaceutical companies can develop orphan drugs more efficiently with the patient's financial contributions to the investment. Contributors would receive a huge discount when, if the hospital did succeed. And the natural equilibrium of this game acknowledges the common sense that people tend to contribute more when the chance of success is higher. I think this idea of having patients contributing financially to the investment not only alleviates the financial burdens of pharmaceutical companies, but also offers the patients a wider range of opportunities to explore more treatments. These are the things I've done to help MPS patients, and I believe that their lives would be much better with the help from every one of you in this lecture hall. The title of my TED Talk is Cacti on the Isolated Island. I thought about the title of my speech for a long time, and I finally chose this one. I think this term vividly depicts the situation of MPS patients. They are a group of people that few people in society are acquainted with, just like a forgotten island in the middle of nowhere. Because of their appearance, many people always have a hard time embracing them. However, they still strive in such an inhospitable condition, just like the cacti on the desert. MPS patients and caregivers use their stories to illustrate the spirit of viva la vida, which from my perspective means the resilience of lives. I wish you all could do the same 3 things I mentioned before in my speech as you step out of this lecture hall: to cherish life, to show MPS patients kindness and respect, and to help them as much as you can. By doing so, I believe that MPS patients, as well as other rare disease patients, will have a brighter future. Thank you very much for listening to my speech.